I'm super, super excited to be here for a number of reasons. One, because I think we don't talk about disobedience enough in the movement for social justice, especially when we think about the fact that individuals, if you're a person of color, if you're a marginalized individual, your very existence, being free, living joyously, is in itself an act of disobedience. And I think it's more important as we continue to do this work, as we continue to live in a society where we have an individual in power, where our rights every single day may be violated, we have to honor the folks like Katie and the other women who were honored today in their fight, and also join them when necessary. And so I'm super excited to talk with Katie because I've been stalking her for the last few weeks, and she's just like awesome. It's so funny, before you showed up to the dinner last night, folks were like, oh, what does Katie look like? And I was like, well, I've watched like 10 interviews and she has these really rosy cheeks and I can totally picture her when she walks in. So it was a pleasure meeting you last night, and I think you're just as genuine as your bio and the work that you've done displays. But I'm curious, right? Because oftentimes when we look at social justice, when we look at disobedience, we think it's sexy, it's trendy. But really, to participate in an act of disobedience, to be an activist, it's not free, it's not cheap. There's like physical, emotional, and economic costs that activists have to take into consideration. And for teachers, oftentimes that's compound, not only for the children you represent in the classroom, but also for the ones you have at home. So how difficult was it for you to really decide to strike, but also to become an activist in that moment?
One of the first questions that my husband and I actually had to sit down and answer, because he is a teacher too, I mentioned that earlier, he teaches 4th grade. It was different for us because that's our entire income. Yeah. It comes from that. A lot of people had a spouse that worked outside of the field of education. So we had to sit down and we had to count the cost. Mm-hmm. And we had to say, this is everything. So if we go on strike, what's that going to look like? What if we're out for 2 weeks? What if we're out for 4 weeks? We don't have a great savings account because we are teachers. So can we do this? And the answer was, how can we not? Mm-hmm. How can we not? We're teaching our children. In my AP Lit class, we're reading The Handmaid's Tale. Mm-hmm. We read Martin Luther.
Which feels like right now.
we read Martin Luther King Jr. Mm-hmm. And so we talk about resistance, and now here the moment comes, how can I look at my kids and say we're going to read about resistance, but I'm not going to resist when I need to? So there was no option, there was no choice. We knew that there would be real cost. We knew that it could affect everything for us. But at the same time, we had to answer with our own courage, and we had to be able to look ourselves in the mirror. And that was something I remember saying over and over. I couldn't live with myself. I couldn't look at myself if I didn't step out in this moment.
Yeah, and it was bigger than just you, right? It was bigger than just your family. It was bigger than just your classroom. It was the entire state that really backed behind you and joined the movement. I remember watching a clip of one of the protests, and at one point you all started to chant, "You are worthy." And I'm curious for you, what does that mean in the context of fighting for social justice, in acts of disobedience, for individuals to see themselves as worthy enough to fight for, but also worthy enough to fight for other people?
Yeah, I think that was one of the key situations here in this strike, was that as teachers, we have been disrespected for so long. So we deal with that consistently. We should be the very backbone of society.
You are, but you're not treated as so.
But we aren't treated that way. We aren't viewed that way. So for us to continue to take this was year after year in West Virginia of all this anti-public education legislation. And so at some point, we had to realize we are worthy. We are worthy of respect. We are worthy of so much more than what we have received. So we have to stand up. We have to stand up for ourselves, because it's not just us. We knew that if we stood up, it was for our county. It was for our state. It was for the nation. It was for our children. It was for the soul of West Virginia. I remember using that line multiple times. The very soul of our state is at stake here. My children, 9 and 7, I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and they may be teachers one day. I don't want to have to look at them and say, no, you shouldn't do that. And if you're going to be a teacher, you're certainly not going to be able to teach in West Virginia.
Or be able to pay your bills, or be able to thrive in any real way.
So we knew that this was about so much more than us. This was not about 5%. This wasn't about a pay increase. This truly was about taking back what we deserved.
Now, you've mentioned that your mother is also a teacher, or was a former teacher, and one of the things we talked about last night at dinner is the fact that this year and next year is really becoming the 50th anniversary for a lot of social champion awards that we've seen, or I should say 50th anniversary for a lot of different movements that were successful, whether the civil rights movement, the LGBTQ movement. But yet we're still fighting many of the same battles today. And so for you, looking back on the success that your movement, your strike had, and the ripple effect across the country, what do we need to do differently to ensure that your children, your grandchildren, don't have to continue this fight 50 years from now?
We need to keep talking. Mm-hmm. We need to keep using our voice. We need to keep giving that voice power, and we need to stay unified. Now that these situations are at the forefront, let's keep them at the forefront. One of the most empowering things through this strike was the fact that it didn't end when we quote unquote won. Yeah. We're more organized now. We're more efficient now. We're more networked now than we ever have been. And so 55 Strong is more powerful today than what it was back when we were actually striking. So I think the key to continue this is to keep raising our voices. Those who find their power can't have their power for a moment. We've got to continue to inspire other people. When we share our stories, then it gives other people inspiration. It gives other people courage to also step out and to also share their stories.
Yeah, and you talk about unification and bringing communities together. And the last time we talked through Skype, you mentioned the fact that this was the cooks, it was the bus driver, yes. It was all of the workers who believed that in the raids, but also believed in the movement in itself. And considering the divisiveness and the separation that's going on in this country and around the world, what do you think world leaders can really learn from what you've been able to accomplish in bringing different communities together to fight for that specific cause?
I don't think you achieve the change that you're looking for without unity. Unity has to be the core. And so in West Virginia, we knew that there would be a spark, is what we said, but that spark would continue to fan into flame. And so when we first started, we had 4 counties. And then went to 11 counties. We had 7 more join. And then it went to 55. And you can't get discouraged when you're at 4. 4 out of 55, some people might quit. Yeah. They might give up. 11 out of 55, some people might quit. They might give up. But if you can get all 55, we didn't have national media come in until day 3. So we went with 4 counties. We had 11 counties. We had 55, 55, 55, and then the eyes of the nation was on us. Yeah. And so you can't give up and you can't quit. You have to keep standing and you have to keep unifying and you have to keep reaching across the aisle.
And listening to people, right? I'm sure you've heard dozens of stories from the different individuals who worked in West Virginia.
When we showed up, we had shirts that had our county name on the back. But one of the great things is that when we were in the Capitol, you had someone from Mingo County standing and locking arms with someone from Hancock County, with someone from Roane County, with someone from Wayne County. And we conversed. We wanted to know. Someone would say, what's Mingo County going to do? What's Wayne County going to do? We weren't isolated. Yeah. We did reach across the aisle, and we wanted to come together because we knew that together we couldn't be stopped.
And how did the government react? Because I'm sure that they did not expect all of you to come at once and to be so unified in such a short amount of time. I mean, it takes people years to find that type of collaboration. So what do you think? What was their reaction?
Well, they tried to pacify us.
Of course.
And so they tried initially to cut this backroom deal. And they gathered all of us together and they played We Are the Champions and wanted to make us believe.
Yikes.
They wanted to make us believe that we had won. And it was like a celebratory party atmosphere. And they come out and they give us this compromise, right? But we had told them up front, if you make us strike, We're not compromising. You're going to give us what we deserve and what we've earned. And so they come out with the compromise, and instantly we start chanting, see you tomorrow. Because they thought we were going back to the classroom. And so they said we would have a cool-off day. Cool-off Wednesday is what they called it. So no one goes back to school because emotions are too high. You've won. We're going to compromise. You go back to the classroom on Thursday. We showed up earlier than ever on Cool-Off Wednesday, and immediately we were chanting, see you tomorrow. We weren't going anywhere. That was when they realized they can't be stopped.
Yeah, that you were serious and that you weren't afraid to lose your job.
Yeah.
Or you were, right? I think oftentimes people think that if we are acting in civil disobedience or we are becoming activists, that there's not a part of us that is still scared.
Right.
What for you was the moment that you realized that this was something that made sense, and you were, are you still afraid, or when was the moment that you realized you weren't afraid to continue to fight?
Courage really isn't about not being afraid. Courage is acting in spite of the fear. And so for me, I was talking to my first period class, and I started crying, telling them we all knew it was the worst kept secret in West Virginia history, that the next day was the strike.
Yeah.
And so there was a young man who, if he needed to be in school, he needed to be in school more than anybody. We were the only family he had. And so the fear of what's going to happen to him if we're out for 3 days or 5 days or 10 days, that was a very real fear that we all had, way more so than losing a paycheck.
Yeah.
It was about our students who, I teach in a very high poverty area, and so we were considering what's going to happen. In the process of trying to strike, we're also making sure that we pack lunches and that we're giving people food so that they can take it home. And if we are out for a month, they're going to be taken care of. So we're organizing that as well. But he looks at me, the bell rings, and he stays behind a little bit. And he comes up to me and he gives me this big bear hug. And he says, Endicott, don't you dare come back until you get everything you deserve. You go give them hell.
Wow.
And that was when I knew I'm all in.
Yeah. And that's like true ripple effect, right? Because we go into this work, we go into the movement with a clear goal, like this is what we're asking for, but we have really no idea who's going to be impacted, what lives we're going to change. Tupac once said, I may not change the world, but I will spark the brain that will change the world. And so I'm curious for you, now that you've done this work, you continue to still be an activist, what are one of the biggest kind of ripple effects that you've seen happen since the strike happened?
So many. I mean, obviously, you look at Oklahoma, you look at Kentucky, Arizona, teachers in Los Angeles. And we're hearing from all of these teachers across the nation. I went to the AP Lit reading in Kansas City over the summer, and you would have thought that I was Superman and I was a hero because I had on a 55 Strong shirt, and everyone was, I mean, it was amazing, the reception to just be around a West Virginia teacher. And so teachers across the nation have been inspired. And that feeling of we are worthy, when we chanted that, I believe that went out across the nation.
Yeah.
And that has been so powerful to witness teachers take that power back. That was already ours, but to take it back and to own it and to not apologize for it. But also, even locally, I remember my students showed up at the Capitol one day. They surprised me. They texted me the night before, and they said, so what time are you going to the Capitol? And I said, well, I'll be there at 9 a.m. And they said, oh, that means we got to leave earlier than what we'd leave for school. And I said, what do you mean you got to leave earlier? And they said, well, we've organized it. The whole class is going to come march with you. And so they all stood, they had their signs made. We literally locked arms and we marched all the way around the Capitol. We went into the rotunda. And when we came back on the first day that I walked back in my room, I got like a 5-minute standing ovation from these students. They were crying, and they all registered to vote. They all went and voted. Some of them wore 55 Strong t-shirts.
That's awesome.
And they said, we know who to vote for now. And they said, you've taught us that it's not enough to just vote. We've got to be active in the political process. And so that has been such a ripple effect because you have students now who are talking about this, students who are showing up to events. We've had several political rallies and different things, and our students are coming. Our students are wanting to be involved. They're wanting to participate. And so seeing them become empowered has been, it's been worth it all.
Yeah, and also I think you show a clear example that voting is one step, but how do you continue to hold them accountable as they're in office is the real kind of like form of civic engagement. And we've also seen teachers who are there's a spark underneath them where they're now running for office in droves. And I think, I'm curious, to your point, if we have more elected officials who do understand what it's like to be a teacher, understand the struggles and the intersectionality of the range of different issues you face, do you feel like the policies will follow that will be better supporting teachers in a real way?
Absolutely. We're electing these people and we're saying, you're going to be our voice. But what happens is they forget and they become their own voice, or they become the voice of different interest groups that, and they do not represent us. So this was a moment where we had to put them on guard, and we had to say, listen, you are going to be our voice, and if you're not, then we're going to make our voice a whole lot louder than yours.
Yeah.
And so I remember a legislator walked out, and my husband and I, it was the very first day, the day 4 counties showed up, and my husband said, can I talk to you for a minute? And he said, no, if you don't like the way things are going in Charleston, why don't you put your name on a ballot? And one of our friends, who's also a teacher, she looked and said, no. If you want to make laws about my classroom, why don't you get your butt in my classroom? And he was stunned. He couldn't even believe that, that had been said.
The last time he's been in a classroom has probably been a few decades.
Right, when he was a senior in high school, probably. So absolutely, we have to have people who are concerned about education, who want to come in and do the work with us, I've offered my classroom, my husband has offered his classroom to any politician who wants to come in and sit down for a minute and see the work that we actually do. No one has took us up on that offer.
They're not brave enough. I don't think they're fully ready. So we have a few moments. I do want to see if there is a few questions in the audience. Raise your hand if you have a question. Oh, we have a question over here.
Hey, so first of all, Katie, I just want to beg you to run for office. You speak with such incredible clarity and passion and intensity about the issues that your community is facing. And you're doing so much service to your community as a teacher, and I really just hope you will think about stepping up for public office as well. But I want to ask you for help on something here. We as educators at a place like MIT are pretty darn well compensated. We don't maybe, we don't need a union to represent us. But our grad students may well need a union to represent them. And we have a lot of terrific young people who work incredibly hard. They're in this beautiful and wonderful city, but it's also one of the most expensive cities in the nation. Even if they are paid what seems like a lot of money, it is often not a living wage, particularly for grad students who have families and who have children, given the housing economy around here. MIT has not been supportive of efforts to unionize thus far. Could I ask you to address my students and some of the other students in this room about how they might start thinking about standing up for their rights if they were to unionize here as members of MIT?
Pretty big question. I take that as a yes, maybe?
It starts with courage.
Oh, let's do it.
It starts with courage. If you want to change something, go change it. Don't talk about it, change it. Get together, meet, and then set out your demands. And then don't budge, because you have the power. We think that institutions have the power. No. We learned really quickly that we don't work for them, they work for us. And so if you want to affect change, then don't wait. It's the quote, and we said it before, we are the ones we've been waiting on. So go out there, get together, and do it. Just do it. Because talk is easy. It's really easy, and it's necessary, but it's only step one. You've got to talk, and then there comes a point where you have to take action. And it may be a small action. It may be 4 counties, as it was in my situation. It may be something small, but you've got to start somewhere. So start, and then don't quit.
Yeah, because we oftentimes think that you have to be a seasonal politician, a seasonal activist to like do something, but you were a teacher for what, more than a decade, and
Right.
and that moment you decided to do something. And so I'm curious for you, right, is as you continue this journey, whether or not you decide to run for office, is how do you want to continue the work beyond just the classroom in regards to fighting for the rights of teachers?
Like I said, we have a network now, and we are far more empowered than what we have ever been before. And so this work is continuing through 55 Strong, through sharing our stories. I said that I've been on like an unofficial 55 Strong tour. I've been to Chicago, I've been to DC, I've been to Los Angeles. And so sharing the story is part of it. You know, as we share our story, it empowers other people. That's one of the things that I've learned. And as an English teacher, I already knew that, but now I'm witnessing it. I'm part of that history now, that just in sharing the story, we inspire other people to stand up and share their story. And so, you know, I just feel like we've got the grassroots organization has already started. We've already mobilized, but a lot of people expected us to quit in March when we quote unquote won.
Yeah.
And that could have been the end of it, right? But it's not been the end of it. We have a meeting coming up in January. We have different things going on, and more people are showing up to these meetings than ever before.
Yeah, because it's beyond just the paycheck, right? There's some teachers that were talking about how they don't have enough books for students. There's not enough, like the schools are
My husband just
unsafe.
spent
Yeah.
$200 on books.
Wow.
I've said this before, when you're a teacher, it's so much more. So it's nothing for a manila envelope to go around my school, and we know what that means. That means somebody needs electricity, a student. A student needs electricity, a student needs a bed, maybe a student needs a cap and gown, and we have to provide that. So we dig in and we pull out what we can, and sometimes we pull out what little bit we have left, and we put it in that envelope, and we make sure that our students are taken care of. And so we sow, and we continue to sow, and we continue to give. But through this movement, we've realized how worthy we really are, because we are so much more than teachers.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that we have realized, is that this is about a whole lot more than standing in front of a classroom and teaching someone a novel or a poem, right? We're inspiring the next generation. We're inspiring them to step out now, not wait until they're 20, not wait until they're 25. They can do something now. My daughter at 9 was making signs. My little boy at 7 was wearing bunny ears, because that was one of the things that we had, because the governor called us dumb bunnies. He was
Well, shout out to your son.
he was making videos, Facebook videos, and he was saying, the governor called my mommy and my daddy a dumb bunny. If that's the case, that makes me a dumb bunny too. I mean, you know, our students, my daughter just presented on 55 Strong in the social studies fair today. So we are inspiring and empowering everyone else, and those students, this was about them. This was about the soul of West Virginia. This was about our future.
And we need the systems, the policies, the institutions to make sure that teachers have what they need to be able to prepare that next generation. So, okay, is there one dying question? We have about 1 minute. Anyone? Any takers? No? Okay, well, she's going to be around for a little bit. Don't you all bombard her with pictures, but she's prettybomb.com. Thank you so much for joining me up here.